Hello and welcome to Teologia 18 a podcast of theology. Today we're here in a special occasion to talk about a very nice topic. Gabby, welcome to another episode of Teologia 18
Well, hello to all. We're very excited about this episode today because, as you can see, we're speaking English. So today the episode will be in English, and there is a reason for that. And the reason is that we will be talking about this book, and even more interesting, we will be talking with the author of this book, who is Mark Renner, a pastor in Ohio,
United States, all the way from United States of America. Mark Renner, welcome to Teologia 18
Thank you for having me on, Alan, Gabby. Really appreciate it. It's great to be here. Yeah. Thank you.
Good. Yeah, man. So, first of all, I told you this offline, but congratulations about this book. I mean, Mark and I, we were at the seminary at the same time. So Gabby also was there, and Mark graduated, got a call, went to serve the Lord, and suddenly he's a published author. And now we are talking about his book. That is great, man. So congratulations, and please share something about this work and share a little bit about you and how you got to this point.
Yeah, thank you. Well, basically, I had a lot of interesting experiences in ministry, like doing mission work, in Asia, Hong Kong, Macau type area, and had interesting experiences there, had interesting experiences as kind of like a director of Christian education, working with youth and young adults, and just in general, living a Christian life in our world, living in bigger cities, living in rural areas. And there were a lot of experiences that I thought, this would be interesting to share, but in what context would I share this? And when I was studying theology in St. Louis at Concordia St. Louis, at that time, for our classes, we were using all of these short stories, case studies, we were using some. So I thought, well, maybe I will start writing some, and that way college students, seminarians, or people in the congregation, different congregations, different Christian communities can use those case studies to talk about, let's say, situations that are maybe a little bit challenging, a little bit messy, a little bit difficult. So I wrote this book, Curious Cases, a series of short pastoral case studies. And the reason I use that word curious is because I would say as a Christian or a Christian leader, you encounter so many situations that are curious in the sense that you want to know more about them. You need to know a little bit more about them to come to a good conclusion or decision. And then also, they're curious in that sometimes you come across situations that are a little strange. So I thought, well, curious needs to be in this title. So basically, I wrote this book to help men and women who are leading in the church, deaconesses, lady deaconesses, men who are pastors, people who are DCEs. I wrote this for people of a variety of backgrounds and settings, and also lay leaders, elders, just people that have to think through some sort of difficult things. It's really for them to think about healthy boundaries, in ministry.
Yeah, and so these cases you mentioned, they are based off of your experiences in ministry, but I know that they are also based on other people's experiences, but also some of them you created, right?
That is all correct. That's all true, Gabby. Yeah. I would say, so I wrote 150 over 15 chapters, 10 in each chapter. I would say in each chapter, maybe like one third are almost exact retellings of something I experienced. I don't use any real names or anything like that.
Hmm.
And then I would say another third are, kind of loosely based off of something I experienced, and then loosely based off of something a good friend experienced, or maybe multiple situations that I experienced combined, like a hybrid. And then I would say probably one third are no, I wasn't there. Uh, this is what I would imagine could happen if a leader in the church of some sort was involved or was there in first person. This is how I think it would have played out, or maybe it would have
Hmm.
played out. So, it's not a book of doctrine, really. It's more practical. How do we think through some messy things before we enter into some messy situations so we can be better prepared for them? I mean, there's a little bit of doctrine like, caring for people that are poor, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. For sure, you can see that come through, but primarily it's a practical book more than like a book of doctrine or something like that.
Hmm.
And I think that's very important, Mark. I remember during the seminary formation, we use this a lot. I mean, if you're a pastor, a leader, or a deaconess, if you've done any of this theological formation, you'll see that what Mark does here is something that we use a lot in the theological and pastoral formation, because even like in the doctrinal classes, we would learn a lot about this doctrine, how this helps us in our formation as a person, as a leader. And then the professor would give us cases, how that plays out in real world situation in the lives of the church. And I think you mentioned something, and I want to take even one step back from this, because sometimes I talk with even with people who are not pastors, and they say that they like to imagine how they would react in certain situations. For instance, if I'm involved in a car accident, how would I react? And then they think about that, how all the problems and the issues, the challenges, or things that they would have to do without having too much time to think, and then they feel like they are preparing for that moment. And I think, and please say a little bit more about that, and Gabby too, but when we are talking about these cases in church, sometimes you get a few things and you face something as a leader, as a pastor, as a deaconess, and you think, wow, what should I do? I've never thought about this before. And I think this is one of the great things about the work you are offering here, because it contributes a lot for you to think ahead and be prepared for cases or for situations that maybe you're thinking, wow, I should have been prepared better for this situation. And please, if you want to say a little bit more about that, but this is something that comes to my mind, especially because it highlights the contribution and the importance of the book you're publishing.
Yeah, thank you, Alan. Yeah, I really appreciate it, and I think that's right. I think it's a good topic starter, not just for pastors or deaconesses, but just members of a congregation or Christian community, or dare I say, even people that, are just curious about Jesus, to talk about situations in the church, in the tower, you could say, out in the public square as well. Talk about situations that come up, and I think it's refreshing for people to look at it and say, Christians sometimes have problems too. Christians encounter things that are difficult as well. And Jesus, he's infallible. He has all the answers, but sometimes the church struggles. Sometimes Christians struggle. And I think when something is really close to a person, something that they've gone through, maybe it's tough for them to kind of open up about that. But if you're in a setting where there are men and women there talking through a Bible study or something like that, well, if a lady says, yeah, when I was at my old congregation, the choir director said dot 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 to the secretary, and then they got in a fight. Blah, 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 blah. Well, then maybe somebody else will feel comfortable to kind of share and open up, because then they're like, oh, I'm not alone in that. Yeah, I went through something like that with the choir director and the secretary, and they were going at each other. And and I guess the other thing I would say is, for people that are maybe going into a new context, like they're leaving perhaps an area that is really densely populated and going into a very rural area, or a very rural area and going into a very densely populated area, there are some really good case studies in here, I think, that can sort of help them imagine what some of those situations might be. I guess the example I would use is, we have a lot of guys, I feel like, that study through whether it be the Lutheran Church or just different denominations, or maybe are going to school at a Christian school, but maybe not for church work, whatever it might be. And they've been in a particular situation, like they grew up in, let's say, a rural area of Canada, and now all of a sudden they're in a large city in Florida. They're in Miami, Florida, all of a sudden. And, and they haven't really ever lived in a community where you have different religions, you have different expressions of faith or of the world, different philosophies. So it can be quite a culture shock for them. And I think the church, maybe the Church Catholic, the Universal Church, I don't know that we always prepare people for urban settings as well as we should, even though so much of the world lives in urban areas. And I would say Christianity early on, the first 200 or 300 years, was very much an urban movement. Large cities usually is where the gospel was going to. So I guess this is sort of part of this is to kind of help people that maybe are used to being in very kind of a Christendom type setting, Christian setting, really strong Christian setting, rural area. Like, hey, you're going to go into a situation that maybe is not like that, a little bit messy, but is also very beautiful.
Yeah, no, that's very nice. And I think I like that you say about well, maybe that's a part of a criticism, but of course, here in our podcast, we are open to criticisms, or open to talking about criticisms about our church of course, in a Christ-like manner. But I do think that maybe the seminary doesn't really prepare students for different contexts as much as it should. But of course, I don't know, there's a lot of things you need to address while you are in the seminary. But I do think that this kind of book really helps pastors, especially new pastors. It doesn't matter. I don't think it's a matter of age, but new pastors that are just entering ministry now, and especially like you said, maybe if they come from I don't know, rural context, and now they go to a big city, or the other way around, they may not be prepared to deal with specific problems, specific issues, specific cases that are common in those types of settings. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yes.
So you mentioned in one of your stories that there's this lady that she enjoys nature so much that she stops going to church, and then she feels like she can worship God in nature. And maybe for some people that's like that's so weird. That would never happen, but that does happen. That does happen, maybe quite a lot. And that's on one hand. But then on the other hand, I feel like some people in like big cities, they feel like they can worship God in their homes, and thus they don't need to go to church to, be in communion with other people, because being alone in their house and praying and reading their Bible is enough. So I don't know, this is one of those instances where these two different cultures or two different contexts call for, I don't know, it calls us to think about, to ponder about possible cases, possible situations that we may face in ministry, right?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I remember, I think it was the end of my second year, mid to end of my second year at St. Louis. Leaders from the East Coast on the United States, so Atlantic District, which is like New York City area, Eastern District, which is Pennsylvania, New York, Florida, Georgia, Southeastern District. So the East Coast presidents, district presidents, bishops came, and they did like this banquet where they really wanted students to come to the banquet, let's say. And there were about 30 or 40 of us there, maybe. And they were just telling about, hey, you come to the East Coast. Oh my goodness, ministry's different out here. It's a little bit messy, but we would love to have you. All of our districts come together. I think all of the districts came together on the East Coast of the US to do like a Disney World family outing. They tried to have incentives to try to attract people. And so much so, Alan and Gabby, that like I know at least a few will actually, I think pretty much all of those guys will say to people that are comfortable out there, who do you know from the seminary that would be willing to come here? Like, oh, really? He grew up in Detroit, in like an urbanized area of Detroit, Michigan, or Chicago. Yeah, he would probably fit in well in Chicago, in like Baltimore, or in New York. If he grew up in Chicago, maybe he would come out here. Who knows? Or he grew up in Cleveland. Maybe he would feel comfortable in Philly. But a lot of the guys, it's crazy to say they don't want to go out there. I don't think I'm saying anything controversial. Like it kind of, I think, sort of frightens them a little bit because they want to go back to like somewhere very rural that they grew up in, which rural areas are great. Um, and if they do get called out to the East Coast, I hate to say it, but I feel like a good amount of those guys get out of there like 2 years in. They take the call back to the town with 10,000 people and the exurb. And, I don't know. I think it like frightens them because maybe they come from an area where we had 5 churches in the county. 3 were Lutheran. There was a Methodist and a Baptist church. And my entire family lives out there. And it's really sad because people need Jesus in cities too. And there's nothing inherently wrong with cities. A pastor I worked with from Long Island, New York, when I was on vicarage, I think I'm remembering this correctly. It was like 7 years ago now, but we would be kind of like in Bible study, and he'd say, "Oh, you guys should drive from Canton up to New York, and all the great museums. We got the Met and everything. Go to Madison Square Garden, go to these places." And they'd be like, "Well, I don't want to go out there." Not everybody. There'd be maybe like a few people that'd be like, "I'm going to go to the Smoky Mountains in Tennessee or North Carolina. I'm going to go to Cherokee, North Carolina. They've got our values out there." And he won't mind. Emil was like, "Do you realize there are more Christians in New York City than there are in North Carolina?" And, the times I've been to New York, and my grandparents lived there and stuff. I never lived there, but I visited there and stuff. I mean, there are Baptist people, Catholic people everywhere. Assembly Episcopalian. There are some Lutherans, but there are Christian people that identify as Christian all over the place there. And then you might go to some place that's rural, and they're listening to like a country song, like "I shot him dead with a shotgun," blah 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 blah, and and like he was looking at my lady, so I shot him dead. And just because it's a rural area or they're listening to country music, that doesn't necessarily mean they're Christians
Yeah.
or they're promoting Christian ideas. It's like what? Like you think because this guy who lives in a city who works with people, lives with people that aren't Christian, he's not going to be Christian? Like I don't get it. But yeah, I think this is what I think. I think the Lutheran Church has beautiful, beautiful teaching on paper and in action too. But I think what I would like to see is more outreach, more connection, more conversation in urbanized areas with a variety of people. And we should have it in rural areas too. But it's so, in my opinion, disproportionate towards the little town rural area. It's almost exclusively like in that direction.
Mhm.
And I don't know. It's disturbing to me a little bit.
Yeah, man. What you're saying about the church in the United States. It's the same situation here in Brazil. Of course, the church here in Brazil used to be a district of the church in the United States until the 70s. So it makes sense. The mission came from there, and mostly all the practice that we have in our national church here came from the United States. So it does make sense. But at the same time, here in Brazil, the most of our church is in rural areas. So there's the same position of people who do not want to go to places, big cities, because it's scary. Actually, there are a few things, and I know the church in the United States also have a few initiatives, but as you said, it is so disproportional. And here in Brazil, we also have a few things, like there's this great program that the church is trying to involve at least a small number of seminarians that go to the one of the biggest cities here in Brazil, this urban area of Rio de Janeiro, and they have this 1 week immersed ministry thing, going to favelas, going to all these different urban situations, which I think helps. I know it helped me. I came from a rural area, and I remember that I thought in a very specific way until I went to this program. And 1 week going to these places in Rio de Janeiro, which is basically like a New York City kind of thing. I remember that
Mm-hmm.
changed me, seeing how people need the gospel there, and how there are ways of doing it in a relevant and faithful way. But it's not everybody who thinks that way. I remember a few guys were like, "Oh, I would
Mm-hmm.
never come here," and I get it. And I think this is something that we need to be honest with ourselves. If that's not for you, it's fine. But I feel people don't even know or understand a few of these places. They only live up with their own idea of what that looks like instead of knowing what that looks like or how that looks like. And
Mm-hmm.
I think this is important, because this is one thing that, as you said, your book helps because it contributes for people to knowing a little bit better how this thing actually works in places where they have no idea how things happen there. And to be honest, we talked a little bit about theological formation at the seminary, and I do believe that, as I said in the beginning, I remember even the professors having sometimes trouble to find specific cases to illustrate what they were trying to teach the students. And I imagine a collection of over 150 cases. That must be very helpful for a professor trying to create and bring different cases for the students to start to think how they would react, how they would put into practice what they learn in this and that book. And this this is great, man. I really think this is, if I were to teach a class in pastoral formation, for instance, I'm sure I would use your book, because there are so many ways for you to engage and bring into the classroom these different situations, and start making the brain that it's loaded with tons of doctrinal distinctions, how that applies, and actually help the student with pass and fail assignments to, hey, let's see how you would react. This is not that good, let's try again, think better this way. And actually, without going or without having to deal with cases like this in real life, you actually can think about them before, be better prepared, and then be sent to different situations. As you said, if you're from a urban setting, you can be better prepared to go to a urban setting. I did my vicarage in the biggest city in Brazil, which is São Paulo. I was very scared when I
Yes.
got my assignment for that city, and I just loved it. I would go back there anytime. I tell Gabby, if one day I get a call to that place, I would think very dearly about it, because I love big urban areas, and I am from a
Yes.
very small town. I grew up in a town with 5,000 people, which is very small. And I loved being in that city with 20 million. And I thought I loved it. Let's
Yeah.
do it. I love that. But
Yeah.
I think things
Yes.
works like yours make it more available, more accessible, and create this bridge for students, for leaders, for pastors to maybe think about that, and even be more open for these situations, these ministries.
Yeah. Thank you, Alan. Yeah, man. I mean, that's part of it too. Maybe someone won't totally change their mind or their perspective on going to certain places. Like you, I grew up in a county when I was born. It only had like 30,000 people in the county. The town I was born in had 10,000 people. And then living in, Asia, living in a city in mainland China that had, it was kind of medium sized by their standards. They had like 4 million people.
Oh my.
And then being in, and then being in like Hong Kong for the time, right? And it was like, I loved it. I mean, sometimes it would get overwhelming or overstimulating a little bit, but for the most part, it was great. The different food, different culture, different perspectives, unique philosophies, and connecting with Christians that we had so much in common together, regardless of what our race was or our ethnicity, and just connecting with our fellow human being that God loves so dearly and has created in His image. Which to me, I mean, to say this really quick, the thing that I love about the image of God, well, the image of God being how I would define it, a sense of community, a rational mind, able to care for God's creation like no other creature can, but also to act as God acts. So if God gave me my eyes, my ears, my mind, and all my members, who really created that word? Who really made that painting? It was really God. God gives us the ability, Martin Luther talks in the Small Catechism, like, I believe that God gave me my eyes, my ears, my mind, and all my members. I could do nothing without Him. So there have been times when I've been like at the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York or the Louvre or the Pompidou Center in Paris or the Tate Modern in England. One time particularly, at the Pompidou Center. Is really where I first saw this. Where I'm like, well, if God gave me my eyes, my ears, my mind, and all my members, who really painted this? Did Paul Cezanne paint this? Ultimately, who really created it? Who really created these different languages and customs that we see? You know, if God isn't it ultimately God? So to me, when we go to new cultures, new places, learn new languages, eat new types of food, we are experiencing unique qualities of God, which to me is very exciting. Um, a little scary, and it's all tainted. Everything's tainted by sin. But yeah.
Yeah, no, that's nice.
That's beautiful. I love it.
I love how you brought creation into it. And actually, one of the things that I wanted to say about the book, it has this connection with art and with creation. But just let me first of all say that this is actually very nice. Gabby and I, we love traveling. I love knowing new places and going to different places and just having go to a very specific restaurant. And I remember in the classes with Dr. Aaron on creation, and he would say that he just wanted to eat on McDonald's. Nothing against McDonald's, that's fine. Just go to McDonald's. But he would say that Dr. Holtke would be, no, let's go to that specific restaurant. That there is only that restaurant in that city, in that town, in that part of town. And I think that's great, just to you see and experience and taste these unique experiences that God creates through those creatures in that specific place. And that's sweet. That's very, very nice. And I love that because and I think that's connected to what you're saying in your book and what we are talking here, because you open your eyes to see outside your bubble, right? Sometimes we are just used to our own experience, our own context, our own people, and oh, we are the best. There's nothing better than this. And that's not the point, of course. The point is recognize that God created everything very good, and everything remains good because God redeemed everything through his son. And I think this is great, not only related to food and places, but actually in different contexts, in different situations, in different sets of life. In rural life, yes, but in very urban areas also. It's great to see that part, because God works there too, and God uses means, uses people, uses leaders who are prepared through cases like these to work and to think about those things outside the box. So I think this is very nice.
One thing that I wanted to mention, and it's connected to what you were saying, this part of like bursting your bubble in a way. What I think is very interesting about this is that, and it's something so connected to this, it's something that I wanted to ask you, is about the subtitles or the chapters, and how did you choose like this subparts, forgot the name now, sorry, but like you talk about racism, which is something that I wanted to mention now, but you talk about racism, you talk about marriage and divorce, you talk about these different contexts of suburban areas and urban areas. So maybe before I talk about this bursting the bubble thing, I wanted to ask you, so how did you come up with all these ideas? Of course, the cases are based off of your experiences, so I believe these aspects are very important to you personally or to your experiences in your ministry. But I just wanted to hear maybe some more about it.
Oh yeah, I mean, basically, it is very important to me. So basically, I was writing this, and I'd say, well, this couldn't go in marriage and divorce, or marriage, or divorce and separation, or engagement and marriage, or this couldn't go in the racism chapter. So I'll have to put it in rural and small town ministry, and it kind of organically came about that way, and it was fairly organic, I think, just based on my experiences and things. And you know, when I talk about racism in this book, certainly there are case studies where you would say, yes, this is taking place in somewhere in the United States, um, perhaps in the American South. Others you might read and say that is probably taking place in South Africa. Others would be a situation where you'd say this could be happening in the Midwest or in the Northeast. So there is racism everywhere, I would say. And, it's really a horrible thing. I would say I heard a pastor about 5 or 6 years ago who in the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod is seen as like very pretty conservative, like very well respected. And it kind of took people by surprise. He had a post on Facebook, I believe, and he said, when someone is really practicing bad racism, their situation is worse before God than someone who believes that they can earn their way to heaven, because they're actually, I think, basically how he put it, and this isn't like verbatim, but he basically said, because when someone's being racist, they're denying the imago Dei, the image of God. They're not just like with someone who's saying that they can earn their way to heaven, they're denying specific revelation, Jesus Christ crucified on our behalf, paid for all of our sins. But when someone's being racist, it's like this horrible breaking of the eighth commandment and the fifth commandment, like actually denying their humanity, like that it's a fellow human. So, I saw racism in Asia. I've seen it here in the United States. I saw a decent amount in Asia where they had, like some of these former British enclaves, they had this Aryan type thinking from the British. I hate to say it that way, from back in the day. And they also had a lot of like Taoistic thinking, yin yang, dark bad, white good, a lot of weird stuff. So I saw it there at times. I hate to say it. I saw some things in St. Louis. I thought were pretty crazy. I've seen things, in Cleveland. I've seen things in Chicago and Memphis. So there is a problem of racism in the world, and it isn't only in the United States. It's in other places too.
Oh yeah, man. I heard the same from the United States. I don't know if it was long ago that a pastor was fired from the synod because he was involved in that. But yeah, it's coming. Brazil has this weird thing that it imports everything that is bad from the United States. So it's very weird. It is so true, man. Whenever there's something bad going on in the United States, Brazilians bring it to Brazil. It's very weird. So yeah, there is some of those stuffs. Yeah, that it's bad, man. I don't think it's as big as, at least from what I heard, it's not as big as it is currently in the United States, but it is. And if it got big in the United States, it will get big here because, as I said, Brazilians and in South America in general, they have this admiration with the United States that whenever something is going on there, it ends up here as well. So
Even
we're
if it's bad.
even if
Yeah.
it's bad.
Yeah, and I think that that connects with what I was beginning to
Yeah.
say before about like bursting the bubble. I really appreciate that you bring this racism part into your book because especially and I think this would be very interesting to translate into Portuguese because it would be a fantastic tool not only for pastors but also for lay people because in Brazil, we have, in some places, there's this tendency to think that there's no racism in the church. And it's very upsetting to say, but it's not true. It's just not true. Unfortunately, we have seen cases of racism in the church, in our church, in the Lutheran church.
Yeah.
And this is why I thought this was so important for you to bring these cases because they make us burst this bubble that we think we live in, that we live in this perfect world that is not marred by sin, and that there's no instances of racism around us. And it makes us think and ponder about what we would do if we encountered a situation like this because we have heard from pastors before that they heard someone talking to them about having experienced some racist comments towards them, and then this pastor said, "Oh no, but there is no racism in our church. This doesn't exist." But man, it does, and again, this is why I thought this was so good because it's important that we talk about this.
Yeah, we need to. I mean, we really need to, Gabby. I mean, as Lutherans, I think we really do a great job at making the distinction of we sin not only by what we do, but what we don't do. And I think sometimes in the Lutheran Church, sometimes, or Christianity kind of in general, sometimes what happens is, well, I didn't actively do anything, but, which maybe they did, maybe who knows, but we can sin by what we don't do too. I would say, I mean, like in St. Louis, Missouri, in Detroit, Michigan, like you go back like 50 years ago, there were like all these Lutheran high schools there, Christian high schools, junior highs. Basically, um, I think what happened was a lot of white flight, a lot of Anglo type people that just moved out of there, got away. They didn't want to live with people from different races or cultures. I hate to say that. They didn't really want to. I would say the civil rights movement in this country was not really that successful. There were battles that were won, but I'll just put it this way. This would be a very basic example. If you went into probably most, and it's a little better than it used to be, but if you went into probably most communities, knocked on the door, communities that are probably predominantly white, said, "Hey, just a quick question. This January, you went to a lot of churches. What are you doing to celebrate Martin Luther King's birthday this year in January?" "Not doing anything." "What do you mean?" That's what a lot of people would probably say. If you went back in time 50 years ago to a rural area of Mississippi, asked the same question, you would get basically the same response. There were there were people like Billy Graham. Do you know Billy Graham? he was seen sort of as a liberal person among American evangelicals because he did not speak out for the Civil Rights Bill of 1964, but he didn't speak out against it either. So remaining neutral, he was seen as a liberal person. And what a lot of people get wrong is they think, well, back in the segregated United States or the South in the 60s, blah, 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 it was, this violent thing. The segregation was always violent and up in people's face. Sometimes it was, for sure. But a lot of times what it was, oh no, um, they don't share our values. I feel more comfortable in another part of town. Don't persecute me because I don't feel comfortable around that. I'm leaving. And I don't really know that it's that different today. It's a little better. Things have gotten a little better, but things are not drastically different than they were in this country in the late 60s, early 70s. I hate to say that. It's a little bit better, but you say, well, we don't redline anymore exactly. And it's like, no, but the echoes of that still live on. Like after redlining was outlawed, communities didn't all of a sudden start building like police stations and fire stations and banks and stuff in that community. So again, I think we need to do things in rural areas and suburban areas, and that's great. But I do think some of the church's lack of existence in some of the urban areas in our country, in the United States, in my country, maybe it's a little bit like that in Brazil. I don't know. Um, it's they wouldn't come right out and say it, but I think it's there is a little bit of racism to it. I think a little bit. Yeah, I'm in an urban congregation here in Cleveland, Ohio, and it's really a great group. And there are all kinds of people in our community, in our area, and we open our doors to many different types of people. Um, I'm sure we could be doing some things better and so on. But I guess in short, what I would like to see from the church is more conversation, more welcoming in of different types of people. Martin Luther King Jr. once said, and I think it's still true today, the most segregated place in the United States is the church on Sundays. If you watch a soccer game, football game, basketball game, soccer match, right? You see all kinds of people there, usually different, hugging, embracing, cheering, the way sports brings people together. I want to see the gospel bring people together like that in the United States, I
Yeah.
guess.
Yeah.
No, that's a great point, man. And I think I've never thought about it before now. I think this is the first time I thought about the absence of the church in certain communities as a reflect of a racist posture. And I honestly think I haven't had a lot of time to think about it, but I think you have a point there, man. There are a lot of communities here in Brazil. I don't know if we actually have one. No, I know we have one because I did my vicarage in one, but we don't have a lot of churches, Lutheran churches in favelas, for instance, and
The poorest
in the
parts of
poorest
the city.
parts and normally these places are seen as filled with traces of sin, with drugs, with crime, and all this. And it might be true, but we believe there is this thing called the gospel who changes lives, and we should be then spending the more we have, the money we have, putting churches and workers and preparing them for those places. And maybe there is the intention, and maybe nobody would say no, we don't want to do that. But the short amount of effort that is put into that maybe is a reflect of something that needs to be worked inside our churches. And especially this weekend I heard that the Lutheran Church in the United States just spent millions of dollars buying property in Wittenberg to be a presence there in the birth of Lutheranism. I was like, why? Why? Uh, why not spend? There are a lot of churches who don't have money sometimes to pay the salary of a pastor or to maintain a ministry, and that could be. I mean, if you give like a a fraction of that to the ministry here in Brazil, for instance, we could make it rain here. But no, let's buy property in Germany because then we'll have presence there. I think that's thinking.
A small town in
Yeah,
Germany.
that's thinking. I think that is
Yeah,
think.
where there's already 10 million Lutheran things,
Yeah, yeah, man. I mean,
right? There's over like what else are you going to do for Luther in
yes,
Wittenberg?
yes.
The whole place is about
Yeah,
Luther.
Right.
yes, yeah. See, and this is what I think. It's I think sometimes we think, and this is something I've been saying for years now. Sometimes we think too much uh, politically instead of gospel oriented, and we let these ideas from outside the church to invade the way we think in the church, and that just shapes the way we do church. And this is something that I'm working on my dissertation. How sometimes we have this strong posture that we cannot be influenced by culture, but we are. The way we are reacting, we are being affected and influenced by it, but in one way. And sometimes you only see the other way as wrong, and there's a lot wrong with all of this. But in any case, that's very, very interesting, and I appreciate you guys saying that because it made me think a lot right now. I'll have to think more about it because, of course, we're recording. I cannot just be speaking out loud thinking now, but I will certainly think about it. So I appreciate that.
Well, and if I could say this really quick, Alan, going back to the idea of the image of God, God giving us a name, God giving us a language, food, perspectives, working through human beings to create. Well, if we look at it that way, like God created this language, God created this food, God created this custom, ultimately, it was in his control. Yeah, it's all tainted by sin, it is. Well, from that perspective, then, isn't it a good thing to be influenced by culture? From my perspective, it's a very good thing, which it's tough for me sometimes as a pastor. I'm listening to people, and it's just like, not always by any means, but sometimes I'm listening to people like, culture's bad. Don't be like the world. The world's bad. And I'm like, well, the philosophy of those who are in power is often twisted and messed up. But the earth is the Lord's. It's good. God created it. Um, this is all the earth. This is all the Lord's domain. He cherishes every person, every creature. So, yeah, I think the church has this precious, beautiful gospel. And if I could just say one more thing, and I'm going to name drop him, I don't think he'll be upset at me. Dr. Sanchez, Leo Sanchez, came to church last month, and we went out to dinner in Little Italy. And he said to me, Mark, does Jesus come into our world, or do we keep Jesus out of our world? If Jesus comes to the world through the church and the church says, oh, I'm not going to, I'm paraphrasing a little bit. I'm not going to go to this company or go to that dinner or, play music with those people because they don't agree with everything I agree or they seem to be doing something that's sinful. Aren't we like keeping Jesus away from them,
Yes.
Yeah.
right? It's Christ that comes through the church. And I think what kind of like alarms me in my country is there's sort of this like kind of like separatist type movement, like the church is just totally different than everything and everyone. We stay over here. And what I appreciate about my congregation so much is one of the many things is St. James is almost as much of a community center as it is a church. Like we host like AA, Crime Watch, we have a counseling center. We open the doors to people. A lot of the people that live in old Brooklyn, Cleveland, were teachers and nurses and firefighters and police officers. So there's almost no distinction at times with our congregation in the community, except we talk about Jesus, probably. We lift up the name of Jesus, I guess. Uh, so anyway, but we are supposed to take Jesus into the world. We're not supposed to keep Jesus out of
Yeah.
the
No,
world.
that's great. And even not going into communities and thinking we are better than those, that's not the posture Jesus had. That's the posture the Pharisees had.
Yes.
And that is very Pharisaic to say, no, that's not good enough. Well, the world was not good enough for Jesus. And as you quoted Dr. Leo Sanchez, um, he came into the world not because he was good enough, but because he needed saving. And I think sometimes we should. I do think sometimes we reflect more the posture of the Pharisees than the posture that Jesus had in his ministry, and that's tough. And of course, we need to do a better job as church in that aspect.
Yeah.
I wanted to say a few things extra because we've been. I mean, this is great. We can keep it going. I'm just gonna. I have a few other things that I wanted to say about specifically about the book, because in the beginning especially about the use, how to use the book, and I said in the beginning how it would help pastors, deacons, leaders in the theological formation, and I also said how it would be helpful to bring it into the classroom. But I also wanted to say, Mark, and this is the we can continue to talk about how the topics that comes out of this conversation. But I also wanted to mention to those maybe who are just lay people watching this that I still think this is a very nice literature for you to have. And even if you're not going to church, if you're just curious, I mean, they are curious cases. But if you're curious about different situations that happen inside the Christian church, and sometimes it can maybe even guide you to appreciate a little bit more the job that the pastor does, or even how it can be complicated to be a leader inside a congregation. And here in Brazil, and I know there it's the same across the world, but there are books, there are specifically like this one, but about stories. We say in Portuguese contos. There are
Short stories.
short stories. So there are a lot of books of short stories about different aspects of life. And maybe if you like short stories, I think this is a good book for you too, because I doubt that many of those short stories books have many church situations. I mean, sometimes they have. I know I have read some, but not from the perspective of someone who is inside the church. Most of times, the author is imagining how things would happen in the church, but this is a pastor who has information, who has experience in multiple situations, multiple contexts, who is writing about this. So it's not even not only the short stories and the cases in this book are curious, but if you are a curious person, which I believe I am, so I think this. I would also recommend reading this because it again it can just foment your imagination and led you to think about lead you to think about a few things. So I just wanted to say that before I forget, because I am not as young as I used to be. I already forget many things, so I didn't want to forget saying that, because especially if someone is watching to this point and thinking, well, I'm not a pastor, I'm not a deaconess, I'm not even a leader in my church, so this is not for me. No, I think this is for you, and believe me, this is a great thing for you to start thinking about everything that goes on in the church. And as you saw, I mean, based on these cases that Mark wrote, look at the conversation, this deep conversation we had about racism. And I would actually say, and this is the second thing, I wonder if we could actually use your book, Mark, as the basis for Bible studies, for instance. You bring this case and then prepare a Bible study that leads you to reflect about this case that you just read as a congregation, as a group. And I think there are a lot of uses for this material, and maybe it would be interesting to translate, or even to have something similar to the context, to Brazilian context. And I just remember, see, I had forgotten, and I'm sorry. I'll just say this, and I will shut up. But I was actually thinking about the these cases that you bring. I know for a fact that the Lutheran Church in the United States right now has over 600 churches with vacancy. They don't have pastors, right? And I know a few of Brazilian pastors have gone to the United States in the past year or so, because congregations in the United States are realizing, well, we might get more pastors at the end of the academic year, but more pastors are retiring as well. So we need to find pastors somewhere. And they are looking outside the border. And I know a few pastors from Brazil have gone to the United States. And I think even this book might help them to know different situations they might get there, because there is this particularity of the American context that it is different from the congregations here. So even pastors who are maybe thinking about serving in the United States, but they are not from the United States, might appreciate your work. So that's it. I'm sorry.
Mhm. Yeah. Oh no, great stuff, man. Like, yeah, I mean, I basically used the Harvard case study model from Harvard and Massachusetts, US. And it's pretty much just the first part is a presentation, background, introduction of characters. Then I present a challenge or an opportunity. And at the end, there are some reflection questions. And I'll ask specifically, like, what Bible verse comes to your mind? Are there any Bible verses from the Gospel of John that come to your
Or
mind
which
when you read
character
this?
from the Bible does this
And
person remind you of? I love that, right? It gets you to think about this and make connections with the Bible stories.
yes, yeah, absolutely. And a little bit, I think, of what I'm trying to do too. Like Jesus, his kingdom could very much clearly be seen when he was eating with, the tax collectors and the sinners, the prostitutes. And it could also very clearly be seen when he's being crucified with a thief on one hand, a thief on the other. One of the thieves says, remember me when you come into my father's, when you come into your glory, when you return. And he says, today you will be with me in paradise. Today you will be with me in paradise. And that is where we see God's kingdom most clearly, is Jesus. dying for this world that he loves so much, dying alongside people that are rejected by this world. And I guess where I'm going with that is, as surprised as people were at the first Christmas when the Messiah came, like people were like, wow, okay, I didn't quite understand that when I read the Old Testament, when I read the Hebrew scriptures. I think my opinion is people are going to have just as many surprises when Jesus comes back. Like, wow, I didn't really understand. I didn't really think about it. Me included, I'm sure. But where I'm going with that is God can speak to us through surprising people and surprising situations. It's so incredible to me. We discount people because of their past or they're in prison or this or that. Look at Jesus's family tree. It's filled with people that had really done all kinds of messed up stuff. Yet that's the avenue that God came into this world, and I really would just love to see this book used in Bible studies, small groups, and I would love to see it, as you guys put it better than what I'm putting it, used to sort of get conversation going, help people be curious. I think without curiosity, it's really hard to follow the golden rule: treat other people the way that you want to be treated. Because without curiosity or imagination, it's like, well, I don't know what it's like to be living under a bridge. I don't know what it's like to go through like a dumpster or a rubbish bin looking for food. But can you imagine what it would be like? I think God wants us to use our imagination. So, yeah, I think this is a good book in starting conversation, maybe encouraging people to have conversations with people that they wouldn't typically have conversations with.
So, Mark, that was very beautifully said. It was really, really beautiful, and I think I love this aspect that you bring about us having curiosity, and that's fantastic because curiosity makes us think about things in a different way, and this book is fantastic in that way because it helps us think about things that maybe we already think about but we think about them in a different way through different lenses, and I really love it, and I wrote about this and I wanted to say, but then you said it, that what I thought about when I was reading this is that of course this will be really helpful for pastors, but the main use that I don't know, I thought about for this book was to use it as a book study in church. And because the questions that you bring, they already have us start the conversation like we're doing here. And then, of course, the pastor doing this in the church and the pastor leading this group, this book study, the pastor would, study beforehand and then prepare some more background or some Bible stories that help us navigate these situations. So I think this will be fantastic, a fantastic tool for pastors to have in their churches and to study with their church members, right? And to start these conversations and foster this curiosity about all these important aspects of the Christian life and the creature life, not just Christian, but just this life in this world that God created. So yeah, it's really, really cool.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you, guys. Yeah. Um, I could really see this being used in Bible studies, like you said, different settings, specialized ministry, and I think it's written in a way to where people outside of the church could get something out of it or at least sit in have a little bit of discussion and not feel totally turned off. Maybe find it interesting. Maybe you want to have a conversation. It could be a good icebreaker for outreach as well, I think.
Yeah.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Well, this was fun.
Well, next time we talk, I want to interview you guys.
Yeah, sure.
This has been great.
This was fun. This was a lot of fun. This was a great conversation. Mark, thank you so much for being with us. I don't know. Do you want to say something else? I don't know where, if someone is interested in getting a copy, where can they find this book?
Yeah, great. So probably the easiest place would be you can find Curious Cases on Amazon. You can find it on christianbooks.com. You can find it on widthandstock.com. So Width and Stock publishers. It's based out of Oregon, USA. But probably Amazon is the easiest way to get it worldwide, I would say. But there are like 5 or 6 different places you can find it
Sweet.
throughout the world.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'd say Amazon.
So we'll
Yeah.
leave a link of Amazon here on the description of this video, this episode. So if you are interested, you can go on Amazon and you can get a copy of Curious Cases, which, as you saw, can lead you into much conversation, much reflection, much necessary reflection. So that's it. This is great, Mark. Thank you so much for being with us. This was a very nice conversation, and I appreciate you being with us today. And please, I have nothing else to say. So do you guys want to edit something or just say something? So say bye to our those who are watching us.
Well, Mark, thank you very much. This was really, really fantastic conversation. And God bless you in your ministry. And God bless you in your study of these curious cases.
Yeah, Mark. Yeah.
Thank you, Gabby. Thank you, Alan. You guys are amazing. God bless your ministries.
God bless you. Thank you so much for this contribution. Thank you so much for being with us. And yeah, may God continue to bless your ministry and your career as author. And we pray that God will use you and use your work for discussion, for reflection. And as we saw, we need to do that a lot. So may God continue to bless you, man. Yeah, that's it for you who watched to this point. Thank you so much for being with us today, and we would love to see you sometime different too. So just subscribe to our channel, or just say hi, say what you thought about this conversation, and yeah, please interact with us. It will be great to hear from you. Thank you so much for watching to this point, and we will see you in our next episode of Teologia 18+.
Bye.
Bye bye.